Captain Elias Ward had seen many things in his life. War, famine, betrayal, even planets burning under alien skies. But nothing made his blood boil like what he saw that evening on Vakar Station. The trade hub was noisy as always. Merchants shouting, machines grinding, smells of oil and spice mixing in the air. Elias was walking back to his small rented ship when he heard a crowd gather near the central market. Curious, he stopped. On a raised platform stood a thin alien girl, her hands tied, her head hanging low. A trader announced her price like she was nothing more than a box of spare parts. "Rare species," the merchant shouted. "Healthy. Only 800 credits." Elias froze. He didn't even know the girl's species, but he saw the fear in her wide, glowing eyes. She was trembling. The crowd laughed and argued about the price. Something inside Elias twisted like a knife. He could have walked away. He was a retired Marine now. No wars, no orders. Just a man trying to stay out of trouble. But he remembered a promise he made years ago. Never again would he stand by and watch someone suffer if he could help. He stepped forward. "I'll take her," Elias said. His voice was calm but carried across the market. The merchant looked him up and down. "You have the credits, human." Elias nodded and tossed him his entire credit chip. Every coin he had saved for the last few months was gone in an instant. The crowd murmured in surprise. Most humans didn't care about alien slaves. The merchant unlocked the girl's bindings and pushed her toward Elias. She stumbled, almost falling, but Elias caught her gently. She flinched at his touch at first, expecting harm. "You're safe now," Elias said softly. She looked at him with confusion. Her voice was small, almost like a whisper. Why did you do that?" Elias didn't answer right away. How could he explain? He had seen too many innocents lost during the war. Saving her felt like saving a piece of his own soul. "Because no one deserves to live like that," he finally said. He led her back to his ship. It wasn't much, just an old cargo hauler he used for transport jobs, but it was clean and quiet. The girl sat on one of the chairs, hugging her knees to her chest. "My name is Elias," he said, sitting across from her. "What's yours?" "Lyra," she said softly. "Lyra," Elias repeated as if promising himself he wouldn't forget it. "Do you have family?" Lyra shook her head. "They took me when I was very small. I don't remember home." Elias felt a familiar anger rising in his chest. Slavers. He had fought them before years ago. They were parasites feeding on the weak, stealing children from their families. "You're safe now," he said again. For the first time, Lyra looked at him without fear. That night, Elias sat in his small ship, staring at the empty space outside the window. He had no money left and no plan. He had just made himself a target. Slavers didn't like losing profit, but when he looked back at Lyra, who was now curled up asleep under a blanket, he knew he had done the right thing. Hours passed. Just as Elias was about to rest, he heard a faint knock on the ship's outer hatch. He grabbed his sidearm and approached carefully. When he opened the hatch, he froze. Standing outside were at least 20 children, all alien, all different species, all with the same look of fear and hope in their eyes. Behind them in the shadows, more figures waited. One of the children stepped forward. "Are you the human who freed Lyra?" Elias nodded slowly, the child's eyes filled with tears. "Please, help us too." Elias looked around. There were more, dozens, maybe even hundreds, hiding in the dark corners of the docking bay. Word had already spread. He had saved one, and now they all came to him. Elias's first thought was practical. He didn't have enough food, enough space, or enough weapons to protect them all. His second thought was dangerous. If the slavers saw this many children gathered in one place, they would come hunting. But as he looked at their frightened faces, Elias felt something shift inside him. For years he had drifted through space with no purpose. Tonight he had one. "Come in," he said finally, stepping aside. One by one the children entered his ship. They were quiet, polite, as if afraid they might scare him away. Lyra woke up and ran to them, hugging two younger kids. Elias closed the hatch, locking it. His mind was already working. Food rations, escape routes, possible allies on the station. He sat down heavily in the pilot chair, rubbing his face. "What have I gotten myself into?" he muttered. Then he looked back at them. Dozens of small faces staring at him with trust, with hope, and for the first time in years, Elias Ward smiled. "All right," he said, his voice firm, like the Marine captain he once was. "If we're going to do this, we do it right. No one touches you again? Not while I'm here." Outside, the trade hub was quiet. Inside, Elias had just become something he never expected. That night, without knowing it, he became a father. Not to one child, but to many. And the galaxy had no idea what storm was coming. Elias woke early the next day. The ship was strangely quiet, considering how many children were sleeping inside. Some of them were curled up on the floor, some on empty crates, some leaning against each other for comfort. Lyra was awake, sitting near the door, keeping watch like a little soldier. "You didn't sleep?" Elias asked. She shook her head. "They said the slavers will come. I didn't want them to catch us." Elias nodded. She was right. Slavers always came back for what they thought belonged to them. He stood and began checking the ship's systems. He had to be ready to leave at a moment's notice. But as he scanned the outside cameras, he saw trouble already coming. 3 armed men walked through the docking bay, scanning each ship. They were rough-looking, wearing the same gang insignia on their armor. Slavers. Elias felt the old soldier inside him wake up. He had faced worse odds before, but back then he had an army at his back. Now it was just him and a ship full of scared children. He turned back to them. "Everyone stay quiet. Don't make a sound." The children obeyed immediately. Elias moved quickly, setting the ship to low power so it looked empty from the outside. Then he grabbed his rifle from under the pilot's seat and took position near the hatch. The slavers stopped right outside. "We know you're in there," one of them shouted, banging on the ship's hull. "Open up and give us the girl. We'll let you walk away alive." Elias stayed silent. He had dealt with men like this before. They always started with threats, then violence. After a moment, the slaver growled, "Fine, we'll take her and the rest by force." They began forcing the hatch's control panel. Sparks flew as they tried to override the lock. Elias waited, his breathing slow and steady. The moment the panel opened, he hit the emergency release. The outer door slammed open with a loud hiss, smashing into one of the slavers and knocking him to the ground. Elias fired one quick shot at the other 2, not to kill but to scare. The energy bolts hit the wall near their heads and they jumped back. "You want them?" Elias shouted, stepping into the light, weapon raised. "Come and try." The slavers cursed and ran back toward the market. Elias knew what that meant. They were going to get reinforcements. He turned back to the children. "We don't have much time. They'll be back with more. What do we do?" Lyra asked, her small voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Elias thought fast. He couldn't just run. His ship wasn't fast enough to escape a blockade, and he had no credits left to buy a safe route. There was only one choice: stand and fight. He began preparing the docking bay. He blocked the entrance with heavy crates, set up makeshift barriers, and connected a few traps to the power grid. Things he had learned in the military for defense. The older children watched him work. "Can we help?" one of them asked. Elias studied them for a moment. "Yes, but listen to me carefully. You don't fight. You stay hidden. You keep the younger ones safe. Understand?" They all nodded. An hour later, the slavers returned, this time with 12 men and heavy weapons. The docking bay shook as they tried to break through. Elias crouched behind the barricade, rifle ready. His heart pounded, but he felt strangely calm. This was what he had been trained for. The door exploded inward. Smoke filled the air. The slavers charged into her and immediately triggered the first trap. A surge of electricity shot through the floor, dropping 2 of them instantly. Elias fired, precise and controlled. Each shot drove them back, forcing them to take cover. "This is your last warning," he shouted. "Leave this station or the next shot won't miss." But the slavers were too greedy to retreat. They threw stun grenades and tried to rush the barricade. Elias ducked behind cover, then grabbed a heavy pipe and knocked one of them to the ground. The fight was brutal but quick. Elias's traps and training gave him the advantage. When the last slaver fled, limping and shouting threats, the docking bay was littered with broken weapons and smoking walls. Elias stood breathing hard, his hands shaking slightly. He hadn't fought like that in years. Slowly, the children came out from their hiding places. Their eyes were wide with awe. You beat them," one of the younger ones said. "For now," Elias replied, reloading his weapon. "But they'll be back, and next time there will be more of them." The thought made him pause. He couldn't just keep fighting wave after wave. Sooner or later, they would overwhelm him. He needed allies. He opened the ship's comm system and sent out a coded message to an old contact from his Marine days, a woman named Kara Vance. If anyone could help, it was her. Hours later, as Elias repaired the damage to the docking bay, the children sat around him whispering to each other. Lyra walked up to him and tugged at his sleeve. "You didn't run," she said quietly. Elias looked at her confused. "What?" "You could have left us," she explained. "You could have saved yourself. But you stayed. You fought for us." Elias didn't know what to say. He had never thought of himself as a hero. He had just done what felt right. Lyra smiled for the first time since he met her. "You are our father now," she said softly. Elias froze. The words hit him harder than any weapon. He looked at the children gathered around him, their faces full of hope. He realized then that this was no longer about one girl, or even one fight. This was about all of them. Every child who had no one else to stand for them, and Elias Ward had just decided that he would be the one who stood. The next day, Elias stood outside his ship staring at the burned marks on the floor from yesterday's battle. The docking bay smelled like smoke, and some of the walls were blackened, but it was still standing. The children were awake early, helping clean the place as best as they could. Even the youngest tried to carry small tools or sweep the floor. Elias watched them with pride. They were frightened, yes, but they were learning to be strong. Then the comm system beeped. A familiar voice came through. "Captain Ward," the voice said. "It's been a long time." "Kara," Elias said, smiling for the first time in days. "I need help." "You always do," Kara laughed softly. Then her tone turned serious. "I saw your message. You really went and made trouble with the slavers, didn't you?" "They started it," Elias replied. "And I'm going to finish it. But I can't do it alone." There was a pause. Then Kara said, "Send me your location. I'll bring a team." Hours later, a small but fast ship landed in the docking bay. Out stepped Kara Vance, tall, strong, and wearing light armor. Behind her were 3 other former Marines, all armed. "You really found a new war, didn't you?" Kara said, looking at the dozens of children gathered around. "Not a war," Elias said. "A home." Kara nodded slowly. "All right then. Let's make sure no one takes it from them." Together they began planning. The slavers had a base somewhere deep in the station, a warehouse where they kept prisoners before shipping them off-world. If Elias could destroy that base, the slavers would lose control over Vekar Station. He and Kara scouted the station for 2 days. The children stayed hidden inside the ship, guarded by the other Marines. Lyra waited by the door every time Elias left, afraid he might not come back. On the 3rd night, Elias and Kara were ready. They moved through the dark corridors of the station, silent as shadows. Kara hacked into the warehouse security while Elias planted explosives on the power lines. Inside the warehouse, they found dozens of cages filled with alien children and even some adults. The prisoners looked up with fear as Elias opened the first cage. "It's all right," he said quietly. "You're free now." One by one, the prisoners were released. Elias gave them simple instructions. Head to his ship. Follow the safe routes marked on the map Kara provided. Then, as the last prisoner left, Elias armed the charges. "We have 3 minutes," Kara said. They ran. The alarms began blaring. Slavers swarmed toward the warehouse, but Elias and Kara were already gone, disappearing into the dark. From the docking bay, the children watched as the far side of the station lit up with a massive flash. The slaver base was gone. Elias returned covered in dust but alive. The children cheered. Even the younger ones clapped their hands. "You really did it," Kara said, standing beside him. "Not just me," Elias said, looking at the children. "We all did, but their work wasn't over." The slavers were furious, and soon ships began arriving. Bigger, better armed. Elias knew they would try to take the station back by force. So he made a choice. He wouldn't wait for them to attack. He contacted the station's workers, traders, and citizens. Many had suffered under the slavers' control for years. When they heard what Elias had done, they began to fight back too. Soon the whole station was alive with resistance. Traps were set in the docking tunnels, alarms rigged to warn of incoming ships and hidden passages prepared to move the children to safety if needed. When the slavers finally came, they expected an easy victory. Instead, they were met with a storm. The docking bay became a battlefield. Elias and Kara led the defense, fighting side by side. The older children passed ammunition, carried water, and even shouted warnings when enemies tried to flank them. The battle raged for hours, but Elias never gave up. When the last slaver ship tried to escape, Kara disabled its engines with one precise shot. The remaining survivors surrendered. The station was free. After the fight, the people of Vekar Station gathered in the market square. They brought food, blankets, and tools. They thanked Elias, bowing to him in their own ways. But the most powerful moment came that night. Hundreds of children gathered in the docking bay, not just the ones Elias had rescued, but others from across the station who had been freed. They surrounded him, each one smiling, each one alive because of him. Lyra stepped forward, her small hands holding his. "You are not just my father," she said softly. "You are all of our father." Elias looked around, his chest tight with emotion. Children from a dozen different worlds called out to him in their own languages, but he understood every word. They were thanking him. For the first time in many years, Elias felt whole. He had found his purpose again. He was no longer just a soldier. He was a protector, a leader, a father to many. As the crowd quieted, Elias stood tall and spoke. "This is our home now," he said, his voice carrying across the bay. "No one will take it from us. Not slavers, not anyone. We stand together. We protect each other. We are family." The children cheered. The people of the station cheered with them. Elias knew there would be more battles ahead. The galaxy was dangerous, and there would always be those who wanted to hurt the weak. But now, Elias Ward was ready. The man who once wandered alone had found a reason to fight again, and across the stars, whispers began to spread about the human who had stood against an entire cartel, the man hundreds of alien children called their father.